AITA for refusing to attend my brother's second wedding because his first wife is still alive and technically still my sister-in-law. So, my brother, Matt, is 35 and I'm 32. He was married to a woman named Laura for 8 years. They met in college, got married young, and for most of that time, everyone thought they were rock solid. They were the couple people pointed to when they said true love still exists. My parents adored Laura. I did too. She was kind, funny, always made an effort with the family, and honestly, she felt more like a sister than an in-law. 3 years ago, Laura got into a terrible car accident. She was in a coma for months. It was one of those situations where no one could say for sure if she would ever wake up. The doctors told Matt the prognosis was grim, but there was a small chance she could regain consciousness. Matt was devastated. He spent every day at the hospital for the first few months. Then, as time went on, he visited less and less. I think he couldn't handle seeing her like that. About a year into it, Matt met someone new, Claire, through a mutual friend. None of us knew about her at first. He didn't tell the family he was seeing someone until about 6 months later. When he did, it was a bombshell. My parents were furious. I didn't even know what to think. On one hand, he was grieving someone who was technically still alive. On the other, he was clearly trying to move on with his life. He tried to justify it by saying that Laura wasn't really there anymore. He even used the phrase, "It's like she died, but her body didn't get the memo," which made my mom cry. Eventually, he started bringing Claire around. She was polite, but had this weird attitude, like she wanted to prove she belonged. She'd make comments about how hard it was being in Matt's position or how strong he was for moving forward. It rubbed a lot of us the wrong way. Then, last year, Laura woke up. It wasn't miraculous. She had a long recovery ahead of her. She has some memory gaps and physical limitations, but she's mentally present. When she first regained consciousness, Matt did go to visit her. According to my mom, he was there for maybe half an hour. Then he called Claire crying, and after that, he refused to see Laura again. He said seeing her messed with his healing process and that she wouldn't want him to be miserable. Laura, being the absolute saint she is, told us not to be angry with him. She said she understood that people move on. She's living in a rehabilitation facility now and has been slowly regaining her independence. She and I have stayed in touch. She's even joked that I'm the only person who treats her like a human being and not a ghost. Fast forward to this year. Matt announced that he and Claire are getting married in December. The whole family is invited. When he told us, the room went dead silent. My dad asked, "You divorced Laura?" Matt hesitated and said, "It's complicated." Turns out, he never finalized the divorce. He filed the papers when Laura was still in the coma, but the court rejected them because she couldn't legally represent herself in that state. So, legally, he's still married to her. I asked him how he could marry Claire if he's still married to Laura. He said they're having a spiritual ceremony, not a legal one. He called it a celebration of commitment and said they'll make it official when the paperwork is sorted out. He said it's just a technicality. My parents refused to give their blessing. My mom said it's cruel and disrespectful to Laura. My dad said if Matt goes through with it, he won't attend. I told Matt I wasn't comfortable going either. He lost it. He accused me of being judgmental and said I was punishing him for finding love again. He said Laura would want him to be happy, which maybe she would, but I couldn't get behind the idea of standing there clapping while my still married brother declared eternal love for another woman. Claire called me later that week to clear the air. She said she was hurt that I wouldn't support them. She said this ceremony was about closure for Matt, not about replacing Laura. She also mentioned that they already booked the venue and told everyone it was a wedding, not just a commitment ceremony, so she didn't want to confuse people. She then asked if I'd be willing to give a speech since I'm good with words. I politely declined. Now, Matt has been rallying other family members to guilt trip me. My aunt texted me saying I was adding to his trauma. My cousin said, "Life's too short to hold grudges." Meanwhile, Laura told me I should do whatever lets me sleep at night. She sounded tired, like she didn't expect much from any of us anymore. That broke me. The thing is, I get that Matt's been through something unimaginable. Watching your spouse fade away and then come back must mess with your head. But to me, that doesn't excuse pretending the first marriage never happened. If he wanted to move on, he should have handled the legal and emotional closure properly before proposing to someone else. Instead, he's acting like everyone else is the problem for not pretending this is normal. My mom says she won't attend either. My dad's sticking to his decision. Most of our relatives are split. Half think we're being cruel, half think Matt's lost his mind. The tension is awful. I'm the one Matt used to be closest to, and now he's telling people I've turned against him. The wedding, or whatever it is in 6 weeks. I've gone back and forth 100 times about whether I'm doing the right thing. Part of me wonders if I'm being self-righteous or holding on to outdated ideas about marriage. But another part of me thinks this is one of those moral lines you don't just blur because it's convenient. So now I'm stuck. My brother says I'm punishing him for moving on. My parents say I'm doing the right thing. Laura says she understands, but sounds heartbroken. And Claire, well, she keeps posting countdown to forever pictures on Instagram with captions like "True love conquers all." Every time I see them, I feel like I'm watching someone build a house on top of grave. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding when his first wife is still alive and technically still married to him. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to help my brother pay for our mom's funeral because of what he did years ago. So I, 34F, lost my mom 3 weeks ago. It was sudden and heartbreaking, and I've been trying to process it while also juggling all the logistics that come with death. My older brother, Derek, 38M, reached out to me the day after she passed, asking if we could split everything evenly when it came to the funeral expenses. Here's where things get complicated. Derek and I were never close. Growing up, he was the golden child. My mom used to bend over backward for him, bailing him out of financial messes, defending him when he got into trouble, and constantly reminding me that he just needed more help. I was the responsible one. I got good grades, worked part-time jobs in high school, and pretty much kept to myself. When I was 23, I got a small inheritance from my late grandmother, around $25,000. Mom told me to save it for grad school or a down payment on a house. I listened. Derek, on the other hand, was 27 at the time and in massive credit card debt. He somehow convinced Mom that I should lend him some of that inheritance to help him get back on his feet. She begged me, saying he'd pay it back within a year. I said no at first, but Mom cried, saying she didn't want to see her children at odds. I caved and gave him $10,000. He swore he'd pay me back in installments once he got a better job. Spoiler alert, he never did. A year later, I found out through mutual friends that Derek had used that money to take his then-girlfriend on a 2-week trip to Europe. When I confronted him, he said, "It was a bonding experience. I needed that for my mental health." When I told Mom, she said, "He made a mistake, but don't hold it against him forever." Fast forward to 2019. Mom got sick and needed in-home care for a few months. I live about an hour away, but I visited every weekend, did her grocery shopping, helped her pay bills online, and stayed overnight whenever she had medical appointments early the next day. Derek, meanwhile, lived 20 minutes away and barely showed up. His excuse was that seeing her sick stressed him out. Despite all that, Mom still named both of us as equal beneficiaries in her will. I didn't argue. It was her choice. But after her passing, Derek started calling nonstop about the funeral expenses, insisting we go all out with a $12,000 casket and a fancy service. I told him I'd contribute up to $4,000 for a modest service and cremation, but I wasn't going to go into debt to make it extravagant. He got mad, saying I was being cheap and disrespectful to Mom's memory. Then he said something that really pissed me off. "You owe it to her to make this special. You already took more than your fair share from her while she was alive." That line set me off. I told him point blank that I wasn't paying for half of anything. I reminded him of the $10,000 he never paid back, all the times Mom bailed him out, and how I was the one who actually showed up for her. I said, if you want a fancy funeral so badly, pay for it yourself. I'm done cleaning up your messes. He called me heartless and accused me of using Mom's death to get revenge. I hung up and haven't spoken to him since. Now, here's where I start to question myself. Some of my extended family members have reached out to guilt-trip me. My aunt said, funerals are for the living, not the dead, and told me I was making everyone uncomfortable by withholding support. Another cousin texted me, saying, you can't put a price on saying goodbye properly. I get it, but I also know Derek doesn't have the money. He works part-time and still lives in an apartment Mom used to help him pay rent for. If I agree to split everything, I know it'll end up being me footing the bill. And honestly, I'm resentful. It feels like this is just another situation where I'm expected to fix things because Derek can't handle responsibility. For context, the funeral home bill came to around $11,800. Derek put down a $500 deposit and then called me, saying he needed me to cover my half, $5,650. I told him no. He said he'd have to take out a loan, and I told him that was his problem. He texted me later that night, saying, I hope you can live with yourself knowing Mom's funeral won't be what she deserves. I talked to my husband about it, and he agrees I shouldn't pay. He even reminded me that Mom once told him in private that she worried about Derek using me financially. But there's still this gnawing guilt. I keep imagining Mom being disappointed that her kids aren't working together. Yesterday, I got an email from the funeral home saying Derek hadn't finalized the payment, so the date for the service is pending. That means Mom's ashes are just sitting there until he pays the balance. I could easily fix this with a single payment, but part of me feels like that would just reinforce the pattern that's been there our whole lives. Derek has since posted a long rant on Facebook about family betrayal and greedy siblings. A few mutual friends have been messaging me, saying, I don't know the full story, but maybe just help him out this one last time for your mom's sake. But I don't think they realize this isn't just about money. It's about years of emotional manipulation and being the default caretaker for both him and Mom. I've spent so long feeling responsible for making peace that the idea of standing firm now makes me feel both proud and ashamed at the same time. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for half of my mom's funeral, knowing it means Derek might have to downgrade the service or delay it entirely because I've finally decided I'm done bailing him out? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé walk me down the aisle instead of my dad? So, I, 27F, am getting married next spring to my fiancé, 29M, and what should have been a happy, family-centered time has turned into one of the most uncomfortable situations I've ever been in. I come from a big family, and we've always been relatively close, but there's one particular dynamic that's made things complicated. My older sister, Emily, 33F, and her fiancé, Jake, 35M. For context, Emily and I have always had a competitive relationship. She's always been the golden child, straight A student, got into a top university, built a successful career, and was always the one my parents bragged about. I was more artistic, more emotional, and apparently too sensitive. I love my sister, but she's always been intense. She needs to be in control of every situation, and if she's not, she finds a way to insert herself until she is. When Emily started dating Jake about 5 years ago, the whole family immediately adored him. He's charming, funny, and seems to get along with everyone. But something about him always rubbed me the wrong way. Not because he's a bad person, but because he can be incredibly overbearing in subtle ways. He's the kind of guy who acts like he knows better than you about everything. And he has this way of making every conversation somehow about himself or his advice. Last year, when my fiancé proposed, Emily was the first person I called. She was genuinely excited at first, but within a few days, she started offering suggestions about venues, photographers, and even what style of dress would look best on me. When I told her I'd already made some decisions, she laughed and said, "Oh, you're really doing this on your own? That's cute." I brushed it off because I've learned that's just how she is. The bigger issue started when my dad, 58M, and I began talking about him walking me down the aisle. My dad and I have a complicated history. He wasn't a bad father, but he was distant when I was younger. He worked long hours and missed a lot of my big moments. But in the past few years, We've rebuilt our relationship. We've spent more time together, had some real heart-to-hearts, and I honestly feel like we're in the best place we've ever been. So having him walk me down the aisle means a lot to me. It's symbolic of the relationship we've repaired. A few weeks ago, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. We were going over wedding plans, and I mentioned that Dad and I were practicing the walk down the aisle at the venue soon. Emily looked at me and said, "Wait, you're having Dad walk you?" I said yes, and she frowned. Then she said, "I just thought maybe you'd ask Jake. He's basically been like a father figure to you." I was floored. I literally laughed because I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She went on to explain that Jake had always been there for me emotionally, unlike Dad, and that it would mean a lot to their side of the family to see him honored that way. I told her I appreciated her input, but that this was something between me and Dad. She didn't drop it. She said I was being ungrateful and stuck in the past. Jake tried to diffuse the tension by saying, "Hey, I'd be honored, but it's your day, of course." But the way he said it made it sound like he expected me to change my mind out of guilt. After that dinner, Emily texted me a long message, basically saying she felt hurt that I didn't see Jake as the supportive male figure he's supposedly been to me. She said Dad doesn't deserve the symbolic gesture because he wasn't there when it mattered. I responded that I forgave Dad a long time ago, and this was about moving forward. She didn't reply. A week later, my mom called me in tears. Apparently, Emily had been telling everyone in the family that I snubbed Jake and that I was doing it to make her look bad. She even told my grandmother that I don't value family loyalty. Now, several relatives are weighing in, telling me to be the bigger person and let Jake walk me halfway at least. When I told my fiancé about it, he was furious. He said it was wildly inappropriate for Emily to make my wedding about herself, and that if I gave in, she'd only push more boundaries. He's right, but now my family is split down the middle. My dad found out about all of it, and when I told him I still wanted him to walk me, he got emotional and said he'd step aside if it would keep the peace. That broke my heart. The worst part came last weekend. Emily showed up at my house unannounced. She sat me down and said, "I just think you're making a mistake you'll regret. Jake is the kind of man you could depend on. Dad isn't. You should honor that." I told her that what she was asking was cruel to both me and Dad. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being dramatic, like always." Then she added, "Don't say I didn't warn you if Dad lets you down again." I finally lost it. I told her that she was manipulative, that she had no right to dictate my wedding, and that Jake was not my father. I said if she kept trying to interfere, she wouldn't be welcome at the ceremony. She looked genuinely shocked and said, "Wow, you'd ban your own sister from your wedding over this." Then she stormed out. Since then, my phone has been blowing up. My mom is begging me to apologize, saying Emily is just trying to protect me. Jake texted me saying he's hurt that I think so little of him. My dad has gone quiet, which makes me feel even worse. My fiancé thinks I need to stick to my boundaries, even if it means my family doesn't show up. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I took it too far. I know Emily can be controlling, but I can also see how, from her perspective, maybe she thought she was helping. And I hate that my dad is being dragged into this mess when all he's tried to do is make amends. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé walk me down the aisle instead of my dad. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house after she lost hers, even though I have plenty of space. I, 34F, bought my own home 2 years ago after saving for nearly a decade. It's a 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, and it's honestly my dream home. I worked hard for it. I lived frugally through my 20s, skipped vacations, stayed in a cramped apartment with a roommate I didn't like, and worked 2 jobs to make it happen. I'm single, no kids, and I'm proud of where I am. My sister, Hannah, 37F, took a different path. She married young, had 3 kids, 10M, 8F, 5F, and for a while, things seemed okay. She and her husband, Tom, bought a house about 40 minutes away. But Tom lost his job last year, and Hannah's been a stay-at-home mom since her oldest was born. They fell behind on mortgage payments, and 2 months ago, their house was foreclosed on. Hannah called me crying, saying they were being evicted in 2 weeks. She asked if they could stay with me for a few months while they got back on their feet. She said I have so much room, and it would be temporary. Here's the thing, I know my sister. Temporary doesn't mean temporary with her. Growing up, she always relied on me to bail her out. She'd crash at my place for a weekend. That turned into 3 months. She'd borrow money and forget to pay it back. And she's messy. I love my nieces and nephew, but they're loud, destructive, and Hannah doesn't discipline them. Still, I felt awful saying no right away. So I told her I'd think about it. That night, I went over the logistics. I have to give up my guest room, probably my home office too. My house would become a chaotic mess. My work-from-home job requires quiet for calls, and with 3 kids around, that would be impossible. Plus, utilities and grocery bills would skyrocket. I offered to help her find a rental instead. I said I could cover their security deposit and maybe their first month's rent if they found something within reason. I also told her about local housing assistance programs. Hannah didn't take that well. She accused me of abandoning my family in their time of need. She said she thought I'd want to help since I live alone in a giant house. I tried to explain that it wasn't personal, but she got angry and said, "You'd rather have empty rooms than let your nieces have a roof over their heads?" After that, she stopped talking to me for a few weeks. Then my mom called. She said Hannah and the kids have been staying with Tom's parents, but it's crowded there, apparently. His parents also took in Tom's unemployed brother. My mom said it would mean a lot if I could just open my heart and my home for a while. She even said I could think of it as paying forward all the blessings I've had. That really rubbed me the wrong way. My mom has a habit of guilting me whenever Hannah makes bad decisions. Growing up, I was the responsible one, and Hannah was the sensitive one. So anytime she messed up, it was my job to fix it. I told my mom no. I said I'd help financially, but not with housing. She sighed and said, "You've changed. You used to care more about family." A week later, Hannah showed up at my house unannounced with her kids and several suitcases. I was working and didn't even hear the knock at first. When I opened the door, she said, "We didn't have anywhere else to go." I was stunned. I told her she couldn't just show up like that. She started crying, and her oldest asked if they could please just stay for a few nights. My heart broke. But I also knew if I let them in for a few nights, they'd be there indefinitely. I told her I was sorry, but I couldn't let them move in. She screamed that I was heartless and slammed the door so hard it rattled the frame. Later, my mom called me again and said Hannah was telling everyone that I turned my back on my family. Some of my relatives have sent me messages calling me selfish, saying family helps family. My cousin even wrote, "You'll regret this when you're old and alone." But a few relatives and some friends said they understood. They know how exhausting it is being the responsible sibling and how people like Hannah take advantage. Still, I can't stop thinking about those kids. They didn't ask for this. I know they're sleeping on an air mattress in Tom's parents' basement now. Every time I picture it, I feel sick with guilt. But I also feel resentment because somehow I'm the villain for having boundaries. The worst part is I started doubting myself. Maybe I'm being selfish. I mean, it's just space. And I could afford the extra groceries and utilities. But it's not really about money. It's about peace. I finally built a life where I'm stable, and I'm terrified of losing that. When I told one of my coworkers about the situation, she said, "Boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival." That hit me hard, because that's exactly what this feels like, survival. Now Hannah has blocked me on everything except Facebook, where she keeps posting vague status updates like, "It's always the ones you least expect who turn their back on you." Family keeps tagging me in those posts, which is humiliating. Mom has tried to mediate, saying maybe I could let them stay just until Christmas. That's 2 months away. But if I agree, what happens after Christmas? What if Tom still doesn't have a job? What if Hannah refuses to leave? I'd have to go through the nightmare of evicting my own sister. Last night, I actually drove over to Tom's parents' house with a bag of groceries and some toys for the kids. When I knocked, Tom's mom opened the door and gave me a look that could kill. She said, "I hope you're proud of yourself." Then she shut the door in my face. I sat in my car and cried. I didn't even drive home right away. I just parked somewhere and tried to figure out how this all spiraled so far. I wanted to do the right thing, but it feels like no matter what I choose, I'm the bad guy. My therapist says I have guilt conditioning, where I equate saying no with being a bad person. She said Hannah has learned that guilt works on me and that she's using it, maybe subconsciously, to control me. That made sense, but it didn't make it easier. Now I'm avoiding family gatherings because I know everyone will take sides. My mom still leaves me voicemails saying things like the kids miss you and you used to be so generous. Part of me wants to cave just to make it stop, but another part of me knows that if I do, it'll never end. Hannah will never leave, and I'll lose the peace I've worked so hard for. So, AITA for not letting my sister and her kids move in, even though I have a room and they're struggling. AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids after she temporarily left them with me 2 months ago. I, 34F, live a pretty quiet life. I have a small house, a stable job as an accountant, and no kids. I've always been the responsible one in my family, especially compared to my younger sister, Mia, 29F. Mia has 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2, with her ex-boyfriend who's been mostly absent since their breakup last year. She struggled a lot, and I've helped her whenever I could. I babysat, lent her money, paid a few of her bills, and even helped her find a new apartment last year. 2 months ago, Mia called me sobbing. She said she'd lost her job, was behind on rent, and needed to figure some things out. She asked if the kids could stay with me for a week or 2. I hesitated, but agreed because the idea of my nieces and nephew ending up in a shelter broke my heart. I rearranged my schedule, got a crib from Facebook Marketplace, and made space for them. That week or 2 has turned into 2 months. At first, Mia would text every few days with vague promises like, "I'm getting stuff sorted," or "I'll come by soon." Then the messages stopped. I had to chase her down just to ask basic questions about the kids, like what allergies they had or when their next doctor appointments were. Every time I asked when she'd be back, she'd give me a new excuse. I found a job but need to save first, or my friend said I can stay with her, but her roommate's still moving out. In the meantime, I've been doing everything. School drop-offs, daycare fees, groceries, laundry, tantrums, bedtime meltdowns, you name it. I am exhausted. I missed work days, burned through my savings, and even had to explain to my boss why I suddenly have 3 kids. The oldest one asked me last week if I was their new mommy. That one broke me. Last weekend, Mia finally showed up at my door unannounced. She looked fine. Hair done, new nails, new phone. She said she was finally in a good place and was staying with a new boyfriend who really gets her. Then she dropped a bomb. She wanted to take a few more months to stabilize and asked if the kids could just stay with me for now. I told her no. Calmly at first, I said I love the kids, but I can't keep doing this indefinitely. I'm not their parent, and I can't afford it financially or emotionally. Mia instantly flipped. She started crying, accusing me of abandoning her and her children when she needed family most. She said I was heartless and selfish for wanting to kick her kids out. I told her it's not fair for me to be their full-time caregiver when I never agreed to that. I said she needs to step up or at least make arrangements with child services if she can't. That set her off even more. She screamed that I was threatening to take her kids away. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, yelling that she'd never forgive me. Since then, she's been posting vague things on social media like, "Some people pretend to care but show their true colors," and "You find out who family really is when times get hard." Our mom called me after seeing those posts and said Mia told her I kicked her and the kids out. Mom said I should have more compassion because Mia's trying. When I explained the real situation, Mom said, "You're good with kids and you're stable. Why not just keep them a bit longer until she's ready?" I asked how long a bit longer is supposed to be. Mom said, "Until she can take care of them," which is the same circular nonsense I've been hearing for months. When I pushed back, Mom said, "Well, you don't understand what it's like to be a single mom." I reminded her I never chose to be one. Now my extended family is divided. A few cousins say I'm doing the right thing and Mia is taking advantage of me. Others, especially the older relatives, think family helps family no matter what. But I feel like I've been guilt-tripped into being a full-time parent without consent. Here's the thing that's eating me up. The kids are great. They've adjusted well, and I love them. The oldest has started calling me Auntie Mommy sometimes. When I think about them having to go to foster care or bounce around again, it makes me sick. But I also can't keep living like this, barely sleeping, missing work, and feeling trapped. I spoke with a social worker friend confidentially. She said that if Mia truly abandoned them, I could seek temporary guardianship, but that would make me legally responsible for everything, medical, financial, etc., and I'm not sure I can handle that either. I don't want to ruin Mia's life or make the kids feel abandoned by their mom, but I also can't just keep pretending this situation is okay. I've tried talking to Mia again, texted her saying we need a plan, not indefinite figuring things out. She read the messages but hasn't replied in over a week. I'm torn. Part of me feels like I should just hold out because maybe Mia will get it together. But another part of me is so angry and resentful that she just dumped her responsibility on me and walked away like it's nothing. My mom keeps calling, telling me to be patient and that this is what family does. But she's not offering to take the kids herself. None of the relatives defending Mia are volunteering either. They all just say I'm better equipped, which is rich considering I'm drowning over here. I'm at the point where I'm considering calling CPS, not to punish Mia, but to at least make sure the kids are properly cared for if she won't take them back. But the guilt is eating me alive. What if they get separated? What if they hate me later for giving them up? I love those kids, but I also feel like I'm disappearing as a person. Every day, I wake up exhausted, wondering how this became my life. And the worst part is that I feel like everyone sees me as the villain for saying enough. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to keep my sister's kids any longer and considering calling child services if she doesn't take them back. AITA for refusing to take down the security cameras in my house after my sister and her kids moved in, and she said I was violating their privacy. So I, 34F, bought my own house about 3 years ago. It's not fancy or huge, but it's mine. I worked hard for years, saved every penny, and finally got a decent place with 3 bedrooms, a little yard, and a garage that I turned into a small workshop. I'm pretty proud of it. I live alone, no kids, no partner, and I like it that way. Earlier this year, my sister, 29F, hit a really rough patch. Her husband cheated, they divorced, and she got full custody of her 2 kids, 7M and 5F. She couldn't afford her rent anymore, so she asked if she and the kids could stay with me for a few months until she got back on her feet. I agreed because, well, she's my sister. Family helps family, right? I told her she didn't need to pay rent immediately, just contribute to groceries and utilities when she could. I also gave her the larger guest room for the kids and let her use the smaller one for herself. Everything was fine for about 2 weeks, until the issue with my security cameras came up. Before they moved in, I had installed a few indoor cameras. One in the hallway, one facing the front door, one in the living room, mainly pointed toward the sliding glass doors to the yard, and one in the garage workshop. They're not hidden or anything. I have them for security reasons because I live alone and occasionally travel for work. The cameras are connected to my phone, and I get alerts if there's movement when I'm away. About a week after my sister moved in, she came to me looking really upset. She said the cameras made her uncomfortable, especially the one in the living room. She said it felt like she was being watched in her own home and that it was creepy for her kids. I explained that they weren't there to spy on anyone. They were just for security. I even showed her the app and how it works. She asked me to turn them off or remove them while she's living here, but I said no. I told her that this is my home, my system, and I have every right to keep my security measures in place. She could choose to avoid the areas with cameras if it really bothered her, but I wasn't going to compromise on my safety. She called me paranoid and accused me of valuing stupid electronics more than her comfort. I tried to stay calm and told her that while I understood her feelings, these cameras give me peace of mind, especially since I'm often away. I offered to give her access to the feed if it would make her feel more at ease, but she refused. She said that wasn't the point and that families should trust each other. The argument simmered for a while, but things got worse last week. I had to go on a 3-day work trip. When I got back, I checked my cameras and realized the living room feed had been offline for 2 days. I thought maybe it was an internet issue, but when I went to check the device, it was gone. My sister had unplugged and hidden it. I confronted her, and she admitted she did it because she couldn't relax knowing I was watching. That made me furious. I told her that tampering with my property was absolutely not okay, and that if she did it again, she needed to find somewhere else to stay. She started crying, saying I was heartless and controlling, and that she felt like a guest, not a sister. I told her that's because she is a guest, and that guests respect the rules of the house they stay in. Since then, things have been tense. She barely talks to me unless it's about the kids, and she keeps making passive-aggressive comments about living under surveillance. My parents heard about it. Of course, she called them crying, and now they're on her side. My mom said I should just take them down temporarily because family matters more than cameras. My dad said I'm being weirdly territorial. But here's the thing, this isn't about paranoia. 2 years ago, I had a break-in while I was at work. Someone got in through the back door and stole my laptop and jewelry. The police never caught who did it. Ever since then, the cameras help me feel safe. They're not hidden or invasive. They don't point into anyone's private space. I'm not filming bathrooms or bedrooms, just common areas and entrances. When I reminded my parents of that, my mom said, "That's different. You were living alone then." I said, "It's my house that hasn't changed." My sister overheard and told me I was treating her like a criminal. She packed up the kids' things and said she might go stay with a friend instead. I told her I wasn't kicking her out, but if she can't respect how I keep my home secure, maybe it's for the best. She left the next day. Now my parents are furious, saying I should have been more compassionate and that I chose cameras over family. My dad said I embarrassed my sister when she was at her lowest. I tried to explain again that I didn't want her to leave, but I can't compromise on my boundaries in my own home. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Maybe I could have temporarily turned them off or at least moved one or two. I didn't mean to make her feel unsafe or unwelcome, but I also feel like I shouldn't have to rearrange my life just because someone else doesn't like my precautions. My best friend says I did nothing wrong and that my sister overreacted. But my parents won't drop it. They keep telling me, "You don't know what it's like to be a single mom with no privacy." Maybe I don't. I just know what it's like to be robbed and to feel unsafe in your own home. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to take down my security cameras while my sister and her kids were living with me. AITA for refusing to give up my family heirloom, wedding ring for my brother's fiancée, and making the entire family turn against me. I, 29F, come from a very close but sometimes dramatic family. My older brother, Jason, 33M, has always been the golden child. My parents adore him. He was the straight-A student, star athlete, and now a successful lawyer. I was always the artsy one. I work as a graphic designer, rent my place instead of owning, and never really fit the mold my parents had in mind. Our grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She was the only one in the family who treated me like I wasn't a disappointment. She used to tell me I was her kindred spirit because I loved painting like she did when she was younger. When she died, she left behind a few personal items for each of us in her will. Jason got her car, a vintage BMW he adored. My mom got her jewelry box, my dad got some family photos and a set of her old tools, and I got her wedding ring, a delicate platinum band with small diamonds and a blue sapphire in the center. It wasn't particularly flashy, but it meant everything to me. I used to sit with her and listen to stories about how she and my grandfather met during World War II, how he proposed with that same ring, and how she wore it every single day for 57 years. She said she wanted me to have it because she knew I'd appreciate the story behind it, not the monetary value. Fast forward to a few months ago, Jason got engaged to his fiancée, Emily, 30F. She's lovely in a social media influencer kind of way. Everything is curated, perfect, and aesthetic. I liked her at first, even though she tends to dominate every conversation. Then one evening during a family dinner, Jason made an announcement. He said that he wanted to honor family tradition by proposing to Emily with Grandma's ring. I was confused and said, "What tradition?" He said Grandma would have wanted the ring to stay in the family line and that it made sense for it to be passed down to the next generation through him, since he's the one getting married first. I laughed because I genuinely thought he was joking. But then my mom chimed in and said it was a beautiful idea. My dad nodded along. I said, but the ring is mine. Grandma left it to me." Jason shrugged and said, "Yeah, but it's a family heirloom. You don't even wear it." I told him I don't wear it because it's precious to me, not because I don't value it. He said he'd make sure it stayed in the family and that Emily would treasure it as her engagement ring. Emily looked so smug, like it was already decided. I told them absolutely not. That ring isn't going anywhere. My mom said I was being selfish and sentimental. I told her those were exactly the reasons Grandma left it to me, because she knew I'd keep it safe and never let it become a status symbol. Jason got angry and said I was ruining a beautiful moment for him and Emily. They left early, and my parents called me later that night to discuss. They told me I should reconsider because Jason is the one carrying on the family name, and it would be symbolic. I said it's not my problem that Grandma didn't leave the ring to him. For weeks, I kept getting subtle guilt trips. My dad said I could lend it to Jason, and they'd return it after the wedding. My mom suggested having the ring resized just temporarily. Emily even texted me directly, saying, I know you're very attached to the ring, but you'll see how special it'll be when I wear it. That message made my skin crawl. Finally, I told them all I wasn't discussing it anymore. The ring is mine, end of story. Jason stopped talking to me entirely after that. My mom said she's disappointed and that I'm creating distance in the family. Then last month, my cousin, 25F, got married. The whole family was there, including Jason and Emily. During the speeches, Jason made a big deal out of family unity and said something along the lines of, some people forget what family heirlooms really mean, but we'll create our own traditions. I knew that was aimed at me. Afterward, I went to say goodbye to my parents, and my mom coldly said, I hope you're happy. You made your brother miserable on what should have been the happiest time of his life. Last week, Jason and Emily announced on Instagram that they designed a custom heirloom-inspired engagement ring, a sapphire center stone surrounded by diamonds. Emily captioned it, some traditions just need a fresh start. Now my parents are saying I forced them into that because I refused to share Grandma's ring and that I've damaged the sibling bond beyond repair. My aunt told me that everyone in the extended family is talking about how cold-hearted I've become. I tried to explain that it's not about possession, it's about respecting Grandma's wishes. But apparently, that makes me stubborn and jealous. To make things worse, I recently found out my mom told Emily what the ring is worth, apparently around $6,000 due to the sapphire and antique design. So now people think I only kept it for the money. I've never once tried to sell or insure it. It's in a small velvet box in my desk drawer. Last night, my dad called and asked if I'd be willing to make peace by letting Emily wear the ring for a few photos during their wedding next year. He said it would mean a lot to bring the family together. I told him no again and said if they keep bringing it up, I'll just stop coming to family gatherings altogether. He sighed and said, You're turning your back on your family for a piece of metal. I told him, no, I'm standing up for what Grandma wanted. Now my entire family is treating me like I'm the villain who ruined everything. My best friend says I'm right to hold my ground, but a small part of me wonders if I could have just let them have the ring to keep the peace. Maybe it's not worth all this drama. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to give my brother and his fiancée my grandmother's wedding ring, even though it's caused a massive rift in the family. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she destroyed my last apartment, trying to manifest positive energy. So I, 29F, bought my first home earlier this year, a small 2-bedroom townhouse that I've been saving for since college. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and I'm extremely proud of it. My younger sister, Mia, 25F, is the total opposite of me. She's very into spiritual stuff, crystals, energy cleansing, astrology, all that. I don't have a problem with it, but she takes it to extremes. Last year, I let her stay with me in my rented apartment after her boyfriend kicked her out. I told her it would be temporary, maybe a few months, just until she got back on her feet. The first week was fine, but then she started doing energy rituals around the apartment, lighting incense, burning sage, and setting up bowls of salt in corners. Again, I didn't care at first, but it started getting out of hand. One day, I came home from work to find every window open, my curtains soaking wet, and Mia waving a bundle of herbs around, chanting something about releasing trapped negativity. When I asked what she was doing, she said she'd had a vision that the apartment was suffocating from stagnant air. She poured salt water into my vents because she read online that it helps purify airflow. That ended up shorting the AC system, and my landlord made me pay almost $900 to fix it. Mia swore she'd pay me back, but she never did. It only got worse. She decided my living room rug was holding onto trauma energy, her words, and left it on the balcony overnight during a storm. It got completely soaked and started molding. She threw away several of my things because she said they had dark attachments. When I confronted her, she said I was being materialistic and closed-minded. The final straw was when she accidentally started a small fire while trying to cleanse the kitchen with burning herbs. Thankfully, I got home in time to put out before it spread, but the landlord was furious. I told her she had to leave after that, and she moved in with a friend. We didn't talk for almost 6 months. Fast forward to now. I finally bought my townhouse and posted some pictures of it online. Mia called me the next day, crying, saying she'd broken up with her new boyfriend and couldn't afford her rent. She asked if she could stay with me just for a couple of months until she found something else. I immediately told her no. I said I loved her, but I couldn't risk her doing the same thing again in my new home. She got quiet, then said she's changed and doesn't do extreme rituals anymore. I told her that was great, but I still didn't feel comfortable. She started crying harder, saying I was heartless and holding a grudge. My mom called later and told me Mia had shown up at her place, but Mom only has a one-bedroom apartment, so Mia's sleeping on her couch. My mom said I was being cold and family should help each other. I told her that family should also respect each other's boundaries and property. Mom said I was exaggerating what happened last time and that Mia just made a few mistakes. I reminded her that those mistakes cost me over $1,000, a ruined rug, and nearly a kitchen fire. Mom said that's all in the past, and that I should give her a chance to make things right. 2 days later, I came home to find Mia sitting on my front porch with 2 suitcases. I asked what she was doing, and she said Mom told her I'd come around eventually. I told her again that she couldn't stay here. She started crying again, saying she had nowhere else to go and that the universe clearly wanted her to live with me since it led her to my doorstep. I told her the universe could pay my mortgage then. She got angry, said I was toxic and rejecting her spiritual healing. I said I wasn't rejecting her healing. I just didn't want her to destroy my home again. She stormed off, but later I got a long text from Mom saying Mia was now at a friend's house temporarily, but was devastated by my coldness. My mom said I'd forgotten what it's like to struggle, and that a good sister helps no matter what. Now, some of my extended family has started chiming in. My aunt texted me saying Mia just needs love and stability, and that I'm being cruel. My cousin said she completely understands why I wouldn't want Mia there. Half the family thinks I'm heartless. The other half thinks Mia's irresponsible. For context, Mia has had issues holding down jobs because she says workplaces drain her aura. She's been fired multiple times for not showing up or bringing incense into the office. Every time, Mom defends her by saying she's sensitive and not built for the modern world. I've always been the one who's had to clean up her messes, paying for her car repairs, helping her move, covering rent when she got behind. I feel guilty because I know she doesn't have much money or support, but I also feel like I've been burned too many times. This house means everything to me. It's my safe space, my investment, and honestly, my first real accomplishment as an adult. The thought of her walking in with her sage sticks and salt bowls makes me anxious. My mom keeps saying I'm letting fear of the past cloud my compassion, but I think I'm just protecting myself. Still, I can't shake the guilt when I imagine her struggling. So now I'm stuck wondering if maybe I should have given her a strict set of rules and a short timeline instead of outright refusing. But then I remember the smell of burning herbs and the sound of my smoke alarm going off. I remember fighting with the landlord and paying bills she promised to cover. And I remember her calling me spiritually dead when I asked her to stop. I know family is supposed to help family, but does that include letting someone who's repeatedly disrespected your space and nearly burn it down move back in? AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me again after what happened before? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into the house I inherited from our parents, even though she says it's what Mom would have wanted. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and my sister, Emma, is 38. We grew up in a small Midwestern town. Our parents were very traditional people, hardworking, loving, but also firm believers in family comes first. They passed away 3 years ago, within 6 months of each other. Dad had a heart attack, and Mom followed after a long fight with cancer. It was a rough time, but I handled most of the logistics, funerals, estate, debts, etc., because Emma was going through a messy divorce and wasn't in the right headspace. Our parents left behind their house, which was fully paid off. It wasn't a mansion, but it's a solid 3-bedroom home with a big yard and a sentimental value. In their will, they split everything evenly between Emma and me, except for one line that said, "We trust our daughters to decide together what to do with the house." At the time, I suggested we sell it and split the money 50-50ths. Emma got emotional and said she couldn't stand the idea of strangers living there. I understood, so I proposed that she could buy me out if she wanted to keep it. She said she couldn't afford that, so the house just sat empty while we both rented apartments in different cities. Fast forward to last year. I was finally able to buy my own small condo. Around the same time, Emma's situation got worse. Her ex stopped paying child support regularly. She got laid off, and she and her 2 kids, 10 and 7, had to move into a small 2-bedroom rental. She started calling me, crying about how hard everything was and how the kids needed stability. Then she brought up the house again. She said, "Why don't I just move in there for a while? It's empty, and it's still half mine. I could take care of it, and it would help me get back on my feet." I told her I wasn't comfortable with that because we'd never formalized anything about ownership, and if she moved in, I'd basically lose any say in what happens to it. She promised she wouldn't change anything, but I know her. She's not malicious, but she's impulsive and messy. I asked if she'd be willing to pay rent or at least cover utilities and maintenance. She said she couldn't afford that, and that I was putting money before family. I told her no. That led to a massive blow-up. She accused me of being selfish and said Mom would be ashamed of me. She even called our aunt and cousins, who then started texting me things like, "It's just sitting there, why not help your sister?" and "Family should look out for each other." I felt like the villain of some Lifetime movie. I decided to rent the house to a small family this spring. I used part of the rental income to pay for ongoing repairs and property taxes, and I put the rest into a joint account that Emma and I both have access to. So technically, she still gets her share. But when she found out, she lost it again. She said I had no right to rent her childhood home to strangers. She's now telling anyone who will listen that I stole the house from her. My cousins have stopped inviting me to family events, and our aunt left me a voicemail saying, "I hope you can live with yourself." Here's the part that really gets me. A few weeks ago, Emma sent me a long email saying she and the kids were basically homeless because her landlord sold their rental. She asked again if she could move into the house temporarily, promising that once she got back on her feet, she'd move out. I offered to help her with a security deposit on another rental instead. She said no, because it makes no sense to waste money when there's a perfectly good home just sitting there that belongs to our family. When I didn't budge, she drove to the town, broke in with a spare key she must have kept, and started moving her stuff in. I only found out because the tenants texted me in a panic, saying someone was trying to enter their home. I had to call the police. She didn't get arrested, just escorted off the property. But now she's furious, claiming I criminalize her for trying to take care of her kids. It's been 2 months since that incident, and we haven't spoken since. She's blocked me on everything. Our aunt and cousins are still giving me the cold shoulder. The tenants renewed their lease, and I'm using the rent to maintain the property and save for future expenses. But sometimes I wonder if I did the wrong thing. It's not like Emma is evil. She's just had a harder life than I have. I have no kids, no dependents, and a stable job. I know she's struggling, but the house represents more than just bricks and mortar to me. It's the last piece of our parents I can hold on to without it being destroyed by resentment or chaos. Still, I can't shake the guilt. Maybe I should have let her stay for a few months. Maybe I should have just taken the risk that she wouldn't move out. But then I remember how she handled her last apartment. Missed payments, piles of junk everywhere, constant drama with neighbors. If she'd moved into our parents' house, I don't think she ever would have left. And then what? I'd either have to sell my half to her for nothing or go through eviction proceedings against my own sister. My therapist says I'm not responsible for saving Emma, that boundaries are part of love. But my family sees me as cold and greedy. Every time someone posts an old photo of mom on Facebook with a caption like, "She always put family first," I feel like they're all silently judging me. So, Reddit-style judgment time. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister move into the house and for renting it out instead, even though she's struggling with her kids and says I betrayed what her parents wanted? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she excluded me from planning? I, 29F, come from a fairly tight-knit family, but over the past year, things have gotten really tense between me and my older sister, Sarah, 34F. We've always had our moments, but I considered us very close. We grew up sharing rooms, secrets, and life milestones so naturally. When she got engaged last year, I was over the moon. I immediately offered to help with planning in any way she wanted, since I've been organizing events professionally for years, and I thought it would be fun to work together like old times. However, Sarah surprised me by saying she had already decided everything and didn't need my input. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just overwhelmed, but it became clear she was serious. She made all her choices in secrecy: venue, dress, guest list, even a photographer, and actively excluded me from any discussions. I was hurt, but I didn't want to create drama, so I stayed silent for months, attending every pre-wedding event quietly and politely. A couple of months ago, Sarah casually mentioned that she and her fiancé were planning to have the reception at my house. I was shocked. I have a 3-bedroom house I bought a few years ago, and while I like hosting small gatherings, it is absolutely not equipped for a wedding reception. I asked her why she thought this was appropriate, and she said that since I had a big backyard and lived in a nice neighborhood, it made perfect sense. She also added that it would save them a lot of money. I tried to explain that my house is not a venue and that hosting a wedding would be incredibly stressful for me. I work full-time, I have a dog, and I also deal with anxiety that can spike in chaotic social situations. I offered to help in other ways, helping with decorations, coordinating vendors, or even contributing financially, but I could not physically host the wedding. She brushed off all my suggestions and said, "It won't be that bad. You could just rent some tents and chairs." At this point, I tried to reason with her again. I explained that a wedding involves hundreds of details and that she was asking me to do all of that while effectively giving me no say in anything. She told me I was being dramatic and that families should support each other, which felt like a guilt trip to me. 2 weeks ago, the situation escalated. Sarah sent me a very long message outlining her plan for the wedding at my house, which included renting a porta potty, blocking the street for parking, hiring a caterer to use my kitchen, and essentially turning my home into a full-scale wedding venue for 150 guests. She ended the message with, "So, we're counting on you to make this happen." I finally snapped. I sent her a very detailed message explaining that I could not host her wedding. I try to be polite but firm. I cannot host 150 people in my home. I cannot rent the equipment needed. I cannot manage vendors, and I cannot deal with the stress of people walking all over my property. I also reminded her that I had offered other ways to help and that I was happy to do those things. Her response was furious. She accused me of throwing away our relationship and being selfish. She even said that if I didn't host the wedding, she might reconsider inviting me to the ceremony. I was stunned. I thought our bond was stronger than that. I responded that my relationship with her is important, but it should not come at the cost of my mental health and personal boundaries. She has since been sending passive-aggressive texts and hinting that I'm the problem in our family for not supporting her in the way she wants. Our parents are divided. My mom says I should just make it work because it's her wedding, while my dad says that Sarah is being unreasonable and that my boundaries are valid. Some friends have told me I might be overreacting because it's her big day, but honestly, the thought of hosting that many people in my house with zero input makes me physically anxious. I feel guilty because I know she's excited about her wedding, but I also feel like she's disregarding my life and space. I love my sister, but this entire situation has made me reconsider how much of my life I am willing to give up to please others. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning and expected me to turn my house into a wedding venue. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their wedding after I found out what they said about me. So I, 32F, bought my first home 2 years ago. It's a nice little place with a big backyard that I've spent a lot of time fixing up. I'm not rich, but I worked my butt off for years and finally got to a point where I could afford something of my own. The backyard has become kind of my pride and joy. I built a small deck, put in a pergola, some string lights, and a fire pit. It's the kind of cozy setup that people like to use for small events or barbecues. My younger brother, Kyle, 28M, got engaged to his fiancée, Emily, 27F, earlier this year. They've been together for about 5 years, and I've always gotten along with her well enough. We aren't best friends or anything, but we've been cordial and have hung out during family events. About 3 months ago, Kyle and Emily came over for dinner and casually brought up that they were thinking of having a small backyard wedding. I thought they were just brainstorming, but then Emily said, "Honestly, we'd love to use your backyard. It's perfect, and it would save us so much money." I was surprised, but flattered. I told them I'd think about it. I didn't want to say yes immediately because hosting a wedding is a big deal, and I didn't know how much work or cost would fall on me. Over the next week, they texted me a few times, asking what I thought, and eventually I agreed on a few conditions. They could use my yard for free, but they'd have to rent their own tent, chairs, and decorations, and they'd be responsible for cleanup. They seemed thrilled. Everything was fine for a while until about a month ago when I went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. My mom was talking about wedding stuff, and I could tell she was a little uncomfortable. When I asked what was going on, she said maybe I should talk to Kyle directly. I pressed a bit more, and she finally admitted that she'd overheard Emily on the phone with one of her bridesmaids saying something like, "We have to make sure the pictures don't show too much of her place. It's cute, but kind of basic." You know how she is. She thinks fairy lights make anything classy. That stung, but I tried to brush it off. Then my mom told me that apparently Emily had also said she didn't want to invite too many of my friends because it's not really my event, and she wanted to limit the number of randoms hanging around. The randoms she was referring to were my friends, people who have helped me build that backyard. Still, I told myself to stay calm and not make a big deal out of it. Then last week, I accidentally found out something worse. A mutual friend of mine and Emily's, who I'll call Jenna, sent me screenshots from a group chat Emily has with her bridesmaids. In the chat, Emily was making fun of me for thinking she's doing me a favor by choosing my place. She wrote, "At least the yard is nice enough for pictures, but we'll have to tell the photographer to crop out the ugly fence." I can't believe she's acting like it's some luxury venue. There were also a few comments from one of her bridesmaids calling me pathetic for trying to be the cool sister, and Emily replied with laughing emojis and said, "Yeah, but she's harmless. At least she won't say no. She's too nice for that." That's when something in me snapped. I texted Kyle and told him we needed to talk. When he came over, I showed him the screenshots and asked if this was really how Emily felt. He looked super uncomfortable and said, "You know how she jokes around. She didn't mean it like that." I told him that it didn't sound like a joke to me and that I didn't appreciate being insulted behind my back while offering them something huge for free. He tried to smooth things over by saying, "Don't take it personally. She's just stressed about the wedding." But I told him I'd made my decision. I wasn't comfortable hosting anymore. I said it calmly, but he completely lost it. He accused me of sabotaging his wedding and said I was being dramatic. Later that night, Emily sent me a long message saying she was disappointed in me for pulling the rug out from under them after I'd already agreed. She said I was being selfish and punishing them over a few harmless comments. My parents got involved after that. My mom thinks Emily was out of line, but also believes I could have just let it go since the wedding was only a few weeks away. My dad is on my side and said I'm not obligated to host anyone who disrespects me. Now my brother isn't speaking to me. He told our relatives I ruined his wedding plans and that they had to scramble to find a new venue. A few family members have called to say I should have just been the bigger person because it's only one day and that I made it harder on everyone. But here's the thing. I was offering them something for free out of kindness. I wasn't charging a dime. And instead of being grateful, Emily mocked me, my home, and my boundaries. The idea of her and her bridesmaids standing in my backyard, laughing at me behind my back, makes my stomach turn. What really hurt most was Kyle's reaction. I expected him to at least understand why I was upset. Instead, he acted like I'd betrayed him. I told him if the roles were reversed, I'd defend him in a heartbeat. He said, "You just don't understand what it's like to be under wedding stress." I told him wedding stress doesn't give anyone a free pass to be cruel. Now the family is split. Some are calling me petty. Others say Emily got what she deserved. Emily has apparently been telling people that I was jealous of her, and that's why I backed out. That one made me laugh out loud, but still hurts that people actually believe her. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I really overreacted. Maybe I could have just ignored the comments and let them have their day. But then I think about all the time and love I've poured into that backyard and how it's supposed to be my happy place. Letting someone use it while secretly mocking me and my home doesn't feel right. Now Kyle and Emily's wedding is happening at some community hall instead, and apparently it's been a nightmare to reschedule everything. My mom says Emily still won't talk to her, and my brother told her he's not sure he can ever forgive me. So here I am, feeling guilty but also firm in my decision. I didn't scream, I didn't curse, I didn't make a scene. I just said no. AITA for refusing to let them use my house after finding out what they said about me. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister stay at my house after she got into financial trouble, even though our parents are pressuring me to. So, some background. I, 28F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. My younger sister, Emily, 24F, is very smart and talented, but has always had a habit of living beyond her means. Our parents have enabled her to some degree over the years, but they've also encouraged me to be a good role model and help out where I can. I have a stable career in tech. I live in a decent apartment, and I generally manage my finances well. Emily, on the other hand, has bounced between jobs, lived paycheck to paycheck, and racked up a fair bit of credit card debt. A few weeks ago, Emily called me in a panic. She had just been evicted from her apartment because she couldn't pay rent, and she had nowhere else to go. She asked if she could stay with me temporarily until she figured things out. I told her I would think about it, and then she started crying and saying she had nowhere else to turn. At first, I felt guilty, like I was being heartless, but I also remembered every time I had bailed her out of a financial mess before, she didn't seem to learn anything. I told her the truth. I'm not comfortable having her live with me. My apartment is small, and I have a demanding job, so I need my space and stability. I also said that I can help her in other ways, like helping her budget, look for jobs, or find a more affordable place, but that living with me was not an option. She got very upset and started saying that I don't care about her and that I'm a terrible sister. Then the situation escalated when I spoke with our parents. I told them Emily couldn't stay with me, and they immediately jumped into, "You need to help her. She's your sister. Family comes first mode." They kept bringing up how I always got what I wanted when we were kids, and how it's unfair that I can afford stability while Emily struggles. I tried explaining that I support her in other ways, like giving her advice or helping her job hunt, but they insisted that letting her stay with me was the responsible and loving thing to do. The pressure got worse over the next few days. My parents called multiple times, leaving voicemails about how Emily has no one else and how I'm being selfish. Emily herself sent me constant texts crying, begging, and threatening that she would be homeless and possibly end up on the streets if I didn't let her move in. One message implied that if I didn't help, she would tell everyone I abandoned her, which really made me uncomfortable. I stuck to my boundaries, though. I offered to help pay for a short-term Airbnb, helped her fill out some applications for shared housing, and even helped her negotiate with a landlord about getting her deposit back. I made it clear that I would be supportive in these ways, but that she could not move in permanently or even for an extended stay at my apartment. Things blew up when I went to visit our parents over the weekend. Emily was there, and she confronted me directly. She accused me of treating her like a child, of not loving her, and of trying to punish her for being poor. Our parents joined in, saying I'm selfish and heartless, and that family means helping each other no matter what. Emily even went so far as to say she'd never forgive me if I didn't let her stay. I tried calmly explaining my reasoning. My apartment is tiny. I need my routine. I can't be her safety net every time she messes up financially, and that I believe helping her in other ways is actually more productive in the long term. It didn't help. They accused me of being cold and unkind, and Emily started crying in front of everyone. I left the conversation feeling like a villain, even though I know I have legitimate reasons for my boundaries. Since then, I've been getting daily texts from both Emily and my parents. Emily's moved into a very temporary hostile situation, which isn't ideal, but it's safe. I've been sticking to my guns and helping her remotely, but my parents are now ignoring me for the most part. Some friends have told me I'm NTA because I have a right to boundaries, but a part of me feels like maybe I am the bad sister for not letting her stay, especially since she's in such a vulnerable position. I know some people would say this is what family is for, but I also feel like enabling her could just make things worse for both of us in the long run. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister live with me even though she's homeless, and for prioritizing my own stability over immediate family demands? AITA for refusing to take down the security cameras in my house, even though my wife says I'm spying on her? So, I, 36M, have been married to my wife, Kelsey, 34F, for 7 years. We have 2 kids, ages 5 and 2. We live in a suburban neighborhood, nothing fancy, but I've always been the type who worries about safety. I grew up in a rough area, and we had our house broken into twice when I was a kid. That stuff sticks with you. Last year, there was a rash of burglaries in our neighborhood, mostly people breaking into cars or garages. I work nights as a paramedic, so I'm gone a lot. It made me nervous knowing my wife and kids were home alone while I was out. So I decided to install a security system. Nothing crazy, just 4 cameras. One at the front door, one in the backyard, one facing the garage, and one in the living room. The indoor camera is angled toward the main floor entryway, not bedrooms or bathrooms. When I told Kelsey I was putting them in, she said she was fine with it, as long as it didn't feel like we were living in a spy movie. I agreed. I even showed her how to use the app so she could check them herself. Things were fine for a few months. Then around May, she started acting really weird about the cameras. She'd unplug the one in the living room during the day, then forget to plug it back in at night. Or she'd put a blanket over it when she was home. I asked why, and she said it made her uncomfortable being watched all the time. I told her that I don't sit there watching her. I just get motion alerts. But she rolled her eyes and said, "You don't have to watch me live to make me feel like I'm being monitored." I tried to compromise. I told her I'd keep the cameras outside only, but she said she still didn't like the idea that I could see who came over. That confused me because it's literally the front door. I said, "It's for safety, not surveillance." She said, "It feels the same to me." I dropped it for a while. Then in July, I got an alert from the camera showing some guy walking up to the house in the afternoon. I opened the app and saw Kelsey opening the door and letting him in. He stayed for about 20 minutes. Later, I asked her about it, and she said it was a coworker dropping off a project she'd borrowed. She seemed flustered, which made me suspicious. I didn't accuse her of anything, but I asked if she'd be okay telling me before people came over while I was gone, just so I'd know who was around the kids. She said, "You're not my dad. I don't need permission to have someone over." Fair point, but the attitude didn't sit right. About 2 weeks later, I got another alert. Same guy, same time of day. I didn't say anything that time, but I saved the clip. When it happened a third time, I asked again who it was. She got defensive and said, "You're crossing a line." We had a huge argument. She said I was invading her privacy and using the cameras to police her life. I said if everything was innocent, there shouldn't be an issue. She said she shouldn't have to explain herself in her own home. Eventually, she told me she'd quit her job and that the coworker was just helping her with some freelance work. I wanted to believe her, but the story didn't fully add up. In August, while I was on shift, I checked the app. I do this sometimes just to make sure doors are locked, etc. I noticed the camera had gone offline. When I got home, I saw she'd actually removed it from the mount and put it in a drawer. That night, I told her that was not okay. I bought those cameras, pay for the subscription, and I installed them for safety. I said if she didn't like it, we could agree on placement, but she couldn't just disable them. She said, I didn't sign up to be watched in my own living room. I told her again that it's not about watching her, it's about protecting the family. The argument escalated. She said she felt like I was using safety as an excuse to control her, and that she felt like a prisoner in her own home. I told her that was absurd, and that if anything happened, like someone breaking in or hurting her, she'd be glad those cameras were there. She packed up the kids and went to her mom's that weekend. I thought she'd cool off, but she texted me saying she wasn't coming back until I took the cameras down. I told her I wasn't doing that. I said she could stay at her mom's for a few days if she needed space, but the cameras stay. It's been 3 weeks. She's still there. Her mom called me and said I'm being paranoid and creepy. My own sister thinks I should just take them down to save the marriage. But my brother says I'm right. If she's not hiding anything, why does she care? Here's the thing that makes me doubt myself. I looked through old footage, and the guy hasn't shown up since she left. That made me wonder if maybe she was up to something and just doesn't want the cameras around because they make it harder to hide things. But maybe she's genuinely just uncomfortable being on camera all the time, and I'm reading too much into it. I don't know anymore. I don't feel like I'm controlling or obsessive. I just want to know my family is safe. But apparently, the way I'm going about it makes me the bad guy. She told me she won't bring the kids home unless I remove every camera from inside the house. I said I'd agree to keep only the exterior ones, but she said even that feels like a violation. So now we're basically living apart because I installed security cameras. My buddy joked that I should be grateful because I now have evidence if anything ever goes south legally, but that's not how I see it. I just wanted peace of mind. I honestly don't know if I'm doing the right thing, or if I've crossed some invisible line between being protective and being invasive. AITA for refusing to take the cameras down? AITA for refusing to take my brother's wife's side after she outed my infertility at a family dinner? So I, 33F, have been married to my husband, David, 35M, for 6 years. We've been trying to have kids for most of that time, but after several failed rounds of IVF and a lot of heartbreak, we found out last year that I'm infertile. It's been devastating, and while I've made peace with it to some extent, I still find it painful to talk about. Our close family members know, but it's not something I like to discuss, especially in public or casual settings. David's younger brother, Kyle, 31M, married his wife, Jenna, 29F, about 2 years ago. Jenna and I have never really clicked. She's the type of person who thrives on attention and drama, always wants to be the loudest voice in the room, constantly posting every minor life update on social media. I try to be civil, but she tends to push boundaries and make everything about herself. A few months ago, Kyle and Jenna announced they were expecting their first baby. David and I were genuinely happy for them, though it definitely stung a bit. I congratulated Jenna and even helped organize her baby shower. I thought we were finally starting to have a somewhat normal relationship. Fast forward to last weekend. My parents hosted a big family dinner, kind of a reunion since some relatives were visiting from out of state. Everyone was there, my parents, David's parents, my 2 brothers, Kyle and Jenna, and a handful of aunts and cousins. Everything was going well until someone, my aunt, I think, made a lighthearted joke about how all the grandbabies will be keeping the grandparents busy soon. She mentioned that with Kyle and Jenna expecting and my younger brother and his wife planning to start trying, the family would be overflowing with babies. Then Jenna, completely unprompted, laughed and said, "Well, not from everyone. Some of us are just meant to be the fertile ones, I guess." There was this awkward silence. I froze because I knew exactly what she was implying. David immediately put his hand on my leg under the table, and my mom gave Jenna this sharp look. My dad tried to change the subject, but Jenna wasn't done. She turned to me with this fake sweet smile and said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean anything by it. I just remember you saying IVF didn't work out." That must have been so tough. The entire table went dead quiet again. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. My throat went dry, and I just said, "Yeah, it was." I excused myself to the bathroom because I could feel myself about to cry. When I came back, the conversation had shifted, but the mood was completely ruined. Jenna was chatting like nothing happened. I managed to get through the rest of the dinner, but as soon as we got home, I broke down. I told David how humiliated I felt and that I didn't want to see Jenna again for a while. David was furious on my behalf and called Kyle later that night. According to David, Kyle said that Jenna didn't mean anything by it and that we were overreacting. David told him that what she did was cruel and disrespectful. Kyle got defensive, saying that Jenna was just trying to relate and that it wasn't her fault if I was sensitive about it. I decided not to say anything directly to Jenna because I didn't trust myself to stay calm. But a few days later, Jenna texted me saying she wanted to clear the air. I ignored it. Then she sent another message saying she felt hurt, that I was making things awkward, and that she didn't mean to offend. I still didn't respond. Yesterday, my mom called and told me that Jenna had complained to my dad and in-laws that I was giving her the cold shoulder. My mother-in-law apparently took Jenna's side and told David that family should be forgiving and that pregnant women can say dumb things sometimes. Now the entire family seems split. My parents and David are 100% on my side. But my in-laws, Kyle, and a few relatives think I'm holding a grudge and making a scene over something small. To make things worse, we have another family gathering coming up next month for Thanksgiving. Jenna texted me again this morning saying she hopes I can let go of the drama before the holidays because she doesn't want bad vibes around her baby. That message sent me over the edge. I finally responded and said, the only drama came from you bringing up something deeply personal in front of everyone. If you can't understand why that was inappropriate, then maybe you're the one who shouldn't be around. Within minutes, Kyle called me yelling that I disrespected his wife and that I owe her an apology. I hung up. Now my in-laws are saying I should apologize for peace's sake and that it's not worth tearing the family apart. David says I don't owe Jenna anything, but I can tell this is putting him in a tough spot because he's close with his brother. Part of me wonders if I should just swallow my pride and apologize to make things easier, but another part of me feels like that would be betraying myself after what she did. I've replayed that dinner 100 times in my head, and I just can't imagine ever doing something like that to another person. David's parents think I'm being cold and that it's time to move on. But how do you move on from being publicly humiliated about something that's already such a painful part of your life? To add insult to injury, Jenna posted a photo last week with the caption, "Can't wait to give the first grandbaby to the family." That stung too, not just because of the wording, but because she knows it's not technically true. My brother has a toddler, and my parents have been grandparents for 3 years. It's like she's deliberately trying to claim some spotlight and erase everyone else's experiences. I've tried to be the bigger person for months now, but every interaction with her just leaves me feeling smaller. So, Reddit-style judgment. AITA for refusing to take my sister-in-law's side or apologize, even though the family wants me to keep the peace. AITA for refusing to let my brother's new wife live in my house after they moved back to town. I, 32F, have lived in the same house I grew up in for my entire life. My parents passed away a few years ago, and I inherited the house. It's a modest 3-bedroom place, perfect for me, and I've been slowly renovating it to make it truly feel like my home. I've always been close with my younger brother, Adam, 30M, but ever since he got married to his wife, Natalie, 28F, things have been complicated. Adam and Natalie recently moved back to our hometown after spending a few years in another state. They were having trouble finding a rental, and Adam called me last month asking if they could temporarily stay at my house until they got their own place. I said no. My house is my sanctuary, and I value my privacy. Adam seemed surprised and a little hurt, but I thought he would understand. A week later, Natalie called me. She sounded almost pleading. She explained that they were having trouble financially, that their lease in their old town ended sooner than expected, and that they were in a bit of a crisis situation. She said she would only stay for a week or two, and they would pay rent. I told her the same thing. I wasn't comfortable having anyone stay at my house, especially for an indeterminate period. I suggested some short-term rentals nearby, or even a cheap Airbnb, but she insisted that it would be so much easier if they stayed with me, saying that I was the only one who really understood family. I didn't budge. I love Adam, and I like Natalie when I see her in small doses, but I've lived alone for a long time, and my house is my personal space. I thought it would be unreasonable to let them stay, even temporarily. Adam and Natalie were both upset, but I assumed they would find another solution. Then things got complicated. Adam called me a few days later, very frustrated, and said that Natalie was very hurt and that I was being selfish. He said he couldn't believe I wouldn't help my own brother in a difficult time. I tried explaining again that it wasn't personal, it's just my home and my rules, but he said that families should support each other no matter what. I told him that helping them out by letting them stay indefinitely was not something I could do. Natalie started sending me messages constantly. Some are passive-aggressive, like, "I guess some people really don't care about family," or "I hope you never need help someday." Others were more direct, asking if I would at least reconsider and offering money for rent. I kept declining politely but firmly. At this point, Adam and Natalie have moved into a friend's spare apartment temporarily, but I'm told they are still upset and considering cutting contact. Here's where it escalates. At a family dinner last weekend, Adam brought up the situation in front of everyone. He said, "I can't believe my sister won't let us stay at her house. It's so selfish. Natalie's family isn't here, and she was really counting on us. My cousins and aunts were quiet, and some gave me sympathetic looks, but it was extremely uncomfortable." I told Adam again, calmly, that my house is my home and that I have the right to decide who lives here. Adam said that I was choosing my comfort over family, and Natalie chimed in, saying she felt unwelcome and hurt. Now, some extended family members are on Adam and Natalie's side. My friends and coworkers, who I've explained the situation to, think I'm completely justified. Adam has stopped speaking to me directly, and Natalie has blocked me on social media. Some family members are pressuring me to apologize for being cold, but I truly feel I am in the right. I have offered other solutions, like helping them find temporary housing or lending money for a deposit, but the idea of letting them live in my house, even for a few weeks, makes me extremely uncomfortable. I'm aware that family loyalty is a big deal, and I know Adam and Natalie might have expected me to say yes, but I feel like my boundaries are being ignored. My parents raised me to be independent and self-sufficient, and I have always respected Adam's independence as well. I just don't understand why this situation has turned into a moral judgment about my character. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his wife stay in my house, even though they moved back to town and are struggling financially? AITA for refusing to let my sister dictate how I spend my wedding money? I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about a year now, and the wedding planning has been stressful, to say the least. Here's some context. I come from a relatively modest background, while Mark's family is upper middle class. I've always tried to keep things low-key financially, and we agreed early on that we would cover most of the wedding ourselves, with some help from our parents if necessary. My sister, Emily, 32F, however, has been the wild card in all of this. Emily is married with 2 kids, and she tends to have very strong opinions on how things should be done, whether anyone asks for them or not. A few months ago, I got a small inheritance from a distant relative, about $50,000. This money was completely mine, and I had decided that I wanted to use a portion of it for the wedding so that Mark and I could have the kind of day we really wanted, without relying too much on our parents. As soon as Emily found out about the inheritance, things started to get complicated. She immediately began suggesting that we spend it differently. Her main argument was that the money would be better used for a house deposit or emergency savings. While I agreed in principle that saving is smart, this was MY money, and I had already mentally allocated a good chunk of it for the wedding. I also told her that we have other savings and are financially stable, so we aren't in any immediate danger that would require emergency funds. Emily did not take this well. She started sending me articles about how people waste money on weddings and videos of lavish weddings that ended in divorce. She insisted that spending thousands on flowers and dresses is stupid and that it would be irresponsible of me to use my inheritance this way. I tried to calmly explain that the inheritance was a gift, not a loan or something that required approval from anyone. She responded by saying that, as my older sister, she has a right to guide me on major financial decisions, especially ones involving large sums. It started to get more intense when she began trying to control other aspects of the wedding. She told me that my guest list was ridiculous because I invited some co-workers and distant cousins, and she tried to pressure me into choosing a smaller venue so that the wedding looked classier and was more financially responsible. She even went so far as to offer to plan the wedding herself if I just handed over my inheritance to her. At this point, I felt cornered. I told her firmly that the money and the decisions about it are mine, and that if she couldn't respect my choices, she would need to step back. Her response was explosive. She accused me of being selfish, immature, and materialistic. She said that I was letting money ruin my relationships and that I was throwing away opportunities for financial security. I reminded her that we are financially secure without the inheritance and that this money was meant for a joyful occasion, not as a hedge against every hypothetical problem. Things came to a head last week. I had booked a venue that Emily deemed too extravagant and a caterer that she said was wasting money on presentation rather than quality. She sent a long group message to both me and our parents saying that she would not attend the wedding if the money continued to be spent in what she called a reckless way. She also criticized my dress choice and the floral arrangements, saying that the wedding would look cheap and that Mark and I would regret our spending. At this point, I had to draw a line. I called her and told her that I cannot and will not let her dictate how I spend my own money and that the wedding plans are not up for debate. She yelled at me over the phone, calling me selfish and a brat, and then hung up. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting a compromise where we could spend less, but ultimately they acknowledged that it's my inheritance, and I can decide how to use it. Since then, Emily has stopped speaking to me, and she has refused to be involved in the wedding. Some friends have told me I might be being harsh, and that family should have a say in important life events. But the money is mine, and I feel like I'm being unfairly attacked for wanting to celebrate my marriage in a way that feels meaningful to me and Mark. I've tried reaching out to explain my perspective calmly, but she keeps sending passive-aggressive texts about how I'm prioritizing things over family values. I do feel bad that the relationship with my sister is strained, and I hate that our family dynamic has been damaged over this. I also wonder if I'm being too rigid or if I should be more open to her suggestions. But at the same time, it's my wedding and my money. I don't think anyone has the right to tell me how to use my inheritance, and I don't think I'm being unreasonable for wanting to enjoy it in a way that brings happiness. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister control how I spend my inheritance on my wedding. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.